You are in your seat. The flight is about to push back. You feel fine. You did everything reasonable, packed light, grabbed a coffee, and threw on comfortable clothes. 4 hours later, you are stiff, bloated, and irritable, and you still have 10 hours to go. Nothing went wrong. That is the trap. In 2026, the mistakes that make long-haul economy miserable are not obvious. They are ordinary decisions that quietly compound. I have mapped out exactly which ones destroy your flight, and at least one is already baked into how you travel. There are 5 categories. Category 3 is the one that surprises absolutely everyone. Let's start with the first category that's quietly ruining long-haul economy flights in 2026, and it starts before you even reach the gate. What you wear. You packed your carry-on carefully, checked in online, showed up with time to spare, and then you sat down in stiff jeans, a tight waistband, and shoes that require a full ceremony every time you take them off. Seems harmless. Before I tell you what actually happens to your body, you need to understand how bad it can get, because most people don't connect the dots until they're already 2 hours deep. Here's what's actually going on. Aircraft cabins are pressurized to roughly 6,000 to 8,000 feet of altitude. At that pressure, your body retains fluid and tissues expand, including your feet, ankles, and abdomen. A tight waistband compresses your gut mid-flight. Stiff denim restricts blood flow. Shoes that fit at sea level start squeezing by hour 3 because cabin level swelling is real and almost universal on flights over 5 hours. Marcus, a consultant who flies Amsterdam to Singapore regularly, wore his usual smart casual outfit, chinos, a fitted shirt, and leather loafers because he had a client meeting the next morning. By hour 6, his feet were so swollen he could not get his shoes back on. He landed shuffling through immigration with barely fastened loafers and spent the first hour of his client meeting quietly, miserable. Not because of the flight, because of what he wore onto it. Here's what this actually costs you. Every hour in the wrong clothing is an hour your circulation is compromised and your body is working harder than it needs to. That compounds into genuine physical fatigue, stiffness, bloating, and a brain running on half power when you land. So what do most people get wrong, and what do smart travelers actually do? Most people dress for arrival, not the flight. What actually works is treating your outfit as functional equipment. Thin breathable base layer, a zip-up hoodie on top. The zip lets you regulate temperature without gymnastics. Soft stretch bottoms with no rigid waistband, moderate compression socks to keep circulation moving in the lower legs, slip-on shoes with room for your feet to expand. Here is the insider move. Before you board, move everything from your pockets into one small pouch in your underseat bag. Sitting on a phone or wallet for 14 hours subtly misaligns your posture for the entire flight. Fix what you wear, and you have handled the first filter. But category 2 is where people make a mistake they are convinced is healthy, and it quietly turns their stomach into the loudest passenger on the plane. The second category is food and hydration, and the gap between what people think is smart and what actually works is wider than most people expect. You grab something at the airport, a hot meal, maybe a sandwich. It felt like a good call. By the 4th hour, your stomach is bloated and doing something you cannot explain. You did not eat anything unusual, or did you? Here is what is actually going on. Cabin pressure changes how your digestive system behaves. Gas expands at altitude. High sodium airport meals cause aggressive fluid retention. Alcohol, which feels relaxing, is a diuretic that accelerates dehydration in a cabin that already sits below 20% humidity, drier than most deserts. The average traveler arrives dehydrated without ever feeling particularly thirsty during the flight. Sarah, a travel blogger, documented her worst flight on record. A 12-hour leg to Tokyo after a full airport burger, 2 glasses of wine, and a ginger beer mid-flight. By the 5th hour, she was bloated, dehydrated, and had a headache that lasted into the next morning. She had done everything that felt like a treat. Every single choice quietly made it worse. Here is what this actually costs you. Dehydration on a long-haul flight makes your head heavy, your concentration shallow, and your mood reactive. When you land dehydrated, your body needs hours to recover, hours you are spending in transit, in queues, or trying to hold a conversation. So what do most people get wrong, and what do smart travelers actually do? Most people either skip water because the cups are tiny, or overcompensate with caffeine and alcohol. What actually works is bringing an empty bottle through security, filling it at the terminal, and sipping steadily across the flight before thirst signals kick in. Add a single-serve electrolyte sachet if you are landing into a demanding day. Skip carbonated drinks and heavily salted snacks. Keep a simple backup, an energy bar, crackers, or dried fruit for when the meal cart timing makes no sense. Here is the insider move. Carry ginger chews. They are small and pocketable, and they settle a difficult stomach faster than most people expect. Frequent flyers carry them the way most people carry mints. Get food and hydration right, and you have cleared two of the biggest drains. But ask yourself, when did you last think carefully about how you actually set up sleep on a plane? Because the next category is where that assumption gets expensive. Here's a number that should stop you. Passengers who get even 2 to 3 hours of consolidated sleep on flights over 10 hours report dramatically lower jet lag severity than those who get fragmented or zero sleep, even when total flight time is identical. Most people know sleep matters. Almost nobody sets it up correctly. The third category is sleep setup, and it is less about willpower and more about engineering. You are 3 hours into a night flight. You have eaten, you are tired, you close your eyes. 20 minutes later, you are awake, the aisle light, the overhead glow, or the slow fall neck snap jolted you out. You try again, same result. By the 8th hour, you have had no real sleep and your brain has no idea what time zone it belongs to. Here is what is actually going on. Economy sleep fails for three specific fixable reasons. First, light. Even ambient cabin light through closed eyelids suppresses melatonin and keeps you in lighter sleep stages. Second, noise. Low frequency engine hum is a consistent stimulus your brain monitors instead of powering down. Third, physical instability. When your neck has no support, your body never fully relaxes because it is passively managing posture the entire time. James, a finance analyst flying London to Hong Kong regularly, spent 2 years assuming he simply could not sleep on planes. He tracked his own attempts across 5 flights and found the same pattern every time: light leak, audio bleed, and the neck drop. On one flight, he fixed all 3 at once with a blackout eye mask with deep cups, noise-canceling earbuds, and a wraparound neck support. He slept 4 hours on a 9-hour flight for the first time in his life. Here is what this actually costs you. A 14-hour flight with zero real sleep impairs decision-making at roughly the same level as mild intoxication. You are navigating immigration, baggage, and transport in that state, or worse, walking into a meeting. So what do most people get wrong, and what do smart travelers actually do? Most people bring a foam neck pillow, put on whatever earphones came in the box, and hope. What actually works is a 3-component system. A blackout eye mask with structured cups, not flat fabric. Noise-canceling earbuds, easier to sleep in than large over-ear headphones. And a wraparound neck support that stops the bobblehead drop entirely. A window seat gives you a wall to lean on and fewer interruptions. An aisle seat gives you freedom but guarantees cart bumps at 3 a.m. Pick the trade-off you can live with. Here's the insider move. Buckle your seatbelt visibly over your blanket before you sleep. Crew can see you are secured without waking you to check. Sleep handled, but none of it holds together if your tech situation collapses mid-flight. And category 4 is the one that wrecks even well-prepared travelers. The 4th category is power and connectivity, and the gap between landing calm and landing in quiet panic usually comes down to decisions made the night before. You board with 60% battery. The seat USB charges slowly. 4 hours in, your earbuds are dead, your phone is at 30%, and the USB port is now doing absolutely nothing. You're 10 hours from landing with no offline content and a roaming plan you forgot to activate. Here's what's actually going on. Aircraft USB ports often output at just half an amp, barely enough to slow the drain on a modern smartphone, let alone charge it. And connectivity on landing is not comfort, it's a functional requirement. After a long-haul flight, you need transport and communication within minutes. Priya, a marketing director flying Dubai to New York, carried a power bank but had packed it in her checked bag. It was confiscated at the gate. She spent 11 hours rationing her battery, landed at JFK with 4%, could not open her ride app, and stood at arrivals for 40 minutes hunting for a working outlet. Completely avoidable. Entirely predictable. Here's what this actually costs you. Landing with a dead phone after 14 hours is not an inconvenience. It's a logistics failure. Every minute you spend finding signal or charging is a minute standing disoriented in a foreign airport with your plans on hold. So what do most people get wrong? And what do smart travelers actually do? Most people rely on the seat USB and assume it will be enough. What actually works is boarding already fully charged and treating anything from the aircraft as a bonus. Charge everything the night before, pack your power bank in, carry on only. Check your airline's watt-hour limit before you fly. Keep a wired headphone backup or adapter for the aircraft audio jack. Here is the insider move. Set up a data eSIM for your destination before you board. The moment you land and turn off airplane mode, you are online. No SIM kiosk, no roaming panic, no hunting for airport Wi-Fi while jet lagged. 4 categories down. What's left is the one nobody thinks about until they're mid-flight, and it's the most avoidable source of frustration on this entire list. The 5th category is cabin organization, specifically how you set up your space in the first 10 minutes after boarding. This first 10 minutes decides your cabin comfort. You are settled. An hour in, you need your lip balm. It is in your bag. You unzip the main compartment. Not there. Side pocket. Not there. You pull the whole bag out, balance it on your lap, dig to the bottom corner. Your seatmate shifts, your elbow catches the tray table. Multiply this by 6 or 7 times across 14 hours and you have spent a meaningful chunk of your flight creating small disasters. Here's what is actually going on. The underseat bag in economy is not passive storage. It is your active survival drawer. The difference between a smooth flight and a chaotic one is almost entirely determined by how that bag is set up in the first 10 minutes. Everything you will reach for more than once needs to be immediately accessible. Everything for the destination goes overhead. Most people do the opposite. David, a frequent flyer with over 60 long-haul flights logged, spent nearly 40 minutes total across a single 15-hour flight to Sydney in reactive bag digging, losing his headphone adapter, misplacing medication, scattering items across the seat, pocket, and floor. That was 40 minutes of minor chaos that kept pulling him out of every sleep attempt. Here's what this actually cost you. Every time you dig through a disorganized bag, you break whatever calm or sleep state you are building. On a long flight, recovery from each small disruption takes longer than the disruption itself. Protect your sleep. So what do most people get wrong? And what do smart travelers actually do? Most people pack their underseat bag as overflow, putting things wherever they fit. What actually works is the one pouch rule. Before you board, consolidate everything you will reach for mid-flight into one small pouch. Keep the pouch in the top or outer pocket of your underseat bag so you never search. You just reach. Everything else goes overhead. Earbuds, phone, lip balm, medication, wipes, a snack. And the rule most people skip: if there is any chance your carry-on gets gate checked, your passport and electronics must be in your underseat bag. Items overhead can be taken, items under your seat cannot. Here's the insider move. Keep a small gap of empty space in your underseat bag before boarding. If crew ask you to consolidate at the gate, you stash it fast, no repacking, no holding up the line. Here's the system in 3 lines. Dress for the cabin, not the destination. Your outfit is equipment. Treat hydration as active maintenance, not reactive comfort. And organize once in the first 10 minutes so the flight runs itself instead of fighting you every hour. Let me know, what is the one thing that destroyed a long-haul flight for you? Like and subscribe for more.